everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer today. Happy Valentine's Day to those of you guys who don't have a Valentine. I'll be your Valentine. I have a fun video that I put together for you guys today in honor of this Hallmark holiday. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the background actually to the history of Valentine's Day, the roots being deeply steeped in paganism. And I want to talk about how this actually ties into Venus's conjunction with Neptune on February 15th. That was quite a mouthful. If you guys are new to my channel, welcome. I'm a Western astrologer. I work with both tarot as well as Western astrology, and I integrate the use of the Sabian symbols to better understand what's going on in the cosmos. Do me a favor before I get into my lecture today, give me a thumbs up if you can, and make sure you're subscribed. Click that button below because sometimes the algorithm works against us. And if you guys want to see more of my content, make sure you're keeping an eye on my posts and also my community tab. We've got videos coming out every couple days. So you guys saw the weekly astro weather. I talked about several really big aspects going on this week. I want to break them down video by video, so why not spend today talking about this conjunction between Venus and Neptune in the sign of Pisces. Very romantic connection. And like I said, I wanted to touch more on the historical and ritualistic side of this Hallmark holiday. So as we know, a conjunction in astrology is one of the strongest aspects. There is this fusing together of two different archetypal themes. We've got two really romantic planets that are making this conjunction at 24 degrees. Now we're going to feel this aspect as early as Valentine's Day. We're probably going to feel it all the way until the 16th, but the conjunction itself will be taking place on the 15th, just the day after. Now we know that Venus is the goddess of pleasure, love, romance, beauty, and she's going to be meeting up with Neptune, the lord of the sea, mysticism, magic, drugs, ecstasy. The list goes on. And when these two come together, oftentimes it is very romantic. It's very spiritual. It's very divine in the sign of Pisces. There's lots of connections to rituals and temples and churches and anything that's Venusian, right? So it's meeting in this element of water, which is also very sensitive, very emotional, and very romantic. I wanted to, like I said, talk a little bit about more of the ritual themes of this connection. I want to also talk about the sacrificial themes that kind of come up with the sign of Pisces, but especially when we see Venus meet Neptune, there can be a sense of sacrificing something, whether it's for ritual's sake or for the sake of love. And I also want to talk about how this might be playing out archetypally in our lives right now. Now, this conjunction is going to be at 24 degrees. So if you have any personal planets, let's say between 23 and 25 degrees of Pisces, it might be extra sweet for you. But with Neptune, it can be ecstasy or agony. I don't always agree with some of the stereotypical textbook things. One of my old astrology teachers always used to say, while Pluto may rule hell, Neptune is hell. So you guys are going to have to let me know in the comments below how Valentine's Day plays out for you. It's going to be a little colorful with that moon square Neptune. But I have three major points that I want to touch on today and how they kind of correlate with some of these conjunctions that are taking place. I guess first and foremost, the thing that really comes up for me is sweet, divine love and fertility. Venus is a sign that is about the feminine. It can be about fertility. It can be connected to the act of romance, which leads to obviously babies and all of the romantic connection that kind of comes with that. Not many people know that Valentine's Day, like I said, it has its roots in paganism. So you go back in time and we look at the celebration that was actually going on in the month of February. It was called Februara. That's probably where February comes from. A festival ritual that is all about ritual and purification. Now, originally the lunar calendar that we used in ancient time was actually a 10-month system. February was the last month of that year before we saw everything turn over. And this is the time that the festival period was held. And it was all about cleansing and fertility and honoring some of those rites. Now, in particular, Valentine's Day actually is connected more to the celebration of Lupercalia, which was celebrated during ancient Roman times on February 15th. Now, you might ask, like, what does this have to do with this conjunction? The conjunction's happening on the 15th. So I think it's interesting that we've got that conjunction happening. It is about ritual. There's lots of ritual things that go into this that we still actually carry into Valentine's Day in modern day time. If we take a look at the conjunction together, it represents that fusing of the goddess and also divine spirit. Okay, so getting back to Lupercalia. The festival was dedicated to the god Leprechus, the god of fertility and shepherds. And it was the time basically of feasting, merrymaking, having a good time, partying, and obviously having sex. It was also time for people to come together and celebrate the coming of spring because we knew that that was going to bring new life, and it was also going to bring more fertility and abundance. This is a season that was associated also with the beginnings of growth. So it was likened to bringing in new life, bringing in new food, and all of the nourishment that you were going to be needing, right, for kind of setting those crops up for the season ahead. Now, just kind of bare bones, basically the morning of this particular festival, priests would meet and they would come together at a cave, and this is all very ritual, okay? It goes back in time to telling the story of Romulus and Remus. They were both the babies that were cared for by a she-wolf. Anyway, so the cave is where the two brothers basically were supposedly birthed and raised, who would grow up to found Rome. So in a representation of fertility, basically they believe that the shepherds would come out, they would gather their sacrifice, they would choose goats, and they would sacrifice these goats or dogs for purification reasons. I know this is like super metal and hardcore, but that's just what they did back then, to be able to use blood as a ritual sacrifice for being able to bring in more fertility for the town. So it's kind of graphic, but they would basically take the blood from the sacrificial knife and smear it across their foreheads as a symbol of purification. The knife was then wiped clean, and then they basically would take the legs of the animals into town, and they would slap women who were walking through town with the goat or the sacrificial legs, and it was welcomed. They saw this as a way to be able to bring blessing and fertility to the childbearing age women, as encouragement of being able to kind of cleanse and purify, and also give them good tidings for their romantic life, right? But we know that red in general represents blood, and it also represents sacrifice. And so that color of red is really the connection to Valentine's Day, believe it or not, as is the color white, because they would use milk for purification and cleaning and consecration of tools, right? They would wipe things clean, representing purity and new life. Interesting. Those are big colors, pink, white, and red for Valentine's Day. After all of this stuff, they would go and they would feast. Basically, they would have huge parties, they would all get together, and they would have all of these kind of like party things that they would do to kind of introduce each other and kind of encourage people to get to know one another if they happen to be single. Okay, so like I said, the Romans believed that lashing some of these women would make childless women more fertile and bless them, hopefully, with an easy birth. Now, part of the celebration in itself was also taking the names of a bunch of young men, putting it into a jar, and allowing women to pull the names from the jar, and that would end up being their Valentine. Essentially, you would pair off with that person, and it would be your partner for the rest of the festival. Also, pairing was seen as a symbol of fertility, bringing together the divine masculine and feminine, and it was seen as a symbol of a promise of new life. Many relationships would follow from these pairings, so it's interesting that people would hang out together, eat, dance, have a good time, and then end up kind of, maybe spending a little bit more time together, and that would develop into romantic relationships or even marriages. Now, it was not unusual for these parties also to have an exchange of gifts, and it was traditional to actually exchange sweets, flowers, love notes. These are all things that we carry into today, that we exchange on Valentine's Day, but not many people know that's where this comes from. Now, eventually, because of the spread of Christianity, we saw that there was like a decline, obviously, of a lot of pagan ritual rites. The Roman Empire came through and it was gradually suppressed. The Catholic Church sought to replace most all of the pagan holidays, right? And this ended up becoming a holiday that was dedicated to Saint Valentine, the martyr who is said to be executed for secretly marrying couples in violation of the emperor's ban on marriage. So there's still some romantic roots somewhere in there. But essentially, yeah, there's your 2 cents about what you need to know about where Valentine's Day came from. But how does this tie in? Well, Venus does talk about beauty. It talks about partnership, relationships, things that may be also more secretive or ritualistic, especially at 24 degrees and in the sign of Pisces. And then that conjunction to Neptune, I think, is really about a mixing or a blending. Now, we'll talk about other ways that can kind of play out, I think, more in like love goggles, but where we're mixing and blending together with people that we love, different types of tradition. It can be also about water magic, herbal magic, potions, and other things that we're creating or cooking up for those who we love. So if you find yourself wanting to make something, making dinner, making a soup, making an herbal tea, drawing a bath, that might be part of what a lot of people are going to be doing with this conjunction. Number 2 for me would be intoxicating love or love drunk, or I like to call love goggles, beer goggles. This is something that's very common when we see a Venus-Neptune conjunction. There can be a tendency to be putting like love on a pedestal, right? Or be seeing somebody in the image that we want to see, but not necessarily who they may actually be. There can be a heightened sense of compassion and empathy in relationships. So in that sense, I think it's wonderful. But if you're experiencing the transit, or if you happen to have a natal Venus-Neptune conjunction, there can be an idealized view of love and relationships. And you may be drawn towards partners who are unavailable or have a tendency to kind of disappear. We want to watch with the Venus-Neptune conjunction for any issues involving like escapism. That can definitely be a thing. Avoidance of reality in relationships, right? Because we can see as these 2 planets come into conjunction, our love or our feelings may not necessarily be grounded in reality, and there can be a sense of being led to disappointment or even disillusionment. And maybe it's just me. I've noticed this a lot, especially since Neptune has been in like the 3rd decan. Time and time again, I keep finding myself having sessions with clients who are like, I don't understand. They ghosted me. Where did they go? Why have I not heard from them? They told me that they were going to fly across the country and we were going to build this life together. And, a week later, his phone has been disconnected. I mean, it's not funny. Some terrible things. But these are the kinds of things that we see sometimes when we see these 2 planets link up, especially when they're receiving squares from other planets. And so I think that's partly why I'm also bringing this up throughout, the month of February and really into mid-March. We're going to continue to see Mars in its shadow of the Mars retrograde. Now, even though Mars has gone direct, and it's been direct since mid-January, until Mars leaves that shadow period and comes out of the square with Neptune, there can be a sense of feeling like, okay, but somebody told me they were going to do this thing and it's not quite accurate, or it's not true, or they didn't follow through, or it sounded really good, but then when I got there, or then when I saw, that they don't look like their Tinder picture, or I've heard a lot of people telling me that they booked hotel rooms or they booked trips and they get there and it looks nothing like the photos. This is some of the stuff that we see with the conjunctions and the squares, the harder aspects to Neptune. So be mindful of that. But on the flip side, right, if you're not looking for your soulmate or your twin flame, if you're not kind of just doubled over in Valentine agony, the Venus-Neptune conjunction can be wonderful in terms of creativity and spirituality, and it can be really amazing for intuitive connections. So wonderful time period to like break out your crystal balls, to be working with your pendulum, to be working with your tarot cards, to be meditating, especially if you want to be integrating the element of water. So if you like water scrying, if that's something you like to do, I don't know if you guys know what that is. Sometimes you can do it with just a glass of water and a candle, and you turn the lights down and then you watch how the light kind of ricochets off the water. But this can also be really mystical, very magical. If you're somebody who is into, you know, sacred rites and being able to do tantra and sacred sex and anything that's going to be more that merger of physical and also spiritual connection, wonderful time for that. Those of you guys who are also really into music, poetry, anything that is going to be about working with the imagination, that side of Neptune. I think of like projections and film and photography and playing with filters and things that can kind of be manipulated and have that really soft look to it, right? You want to think of like Mariah Carey's, her Vaseline on the lens. Everything's just kind of that soft focus, right? Very, very Venus, Neptune, especially in the sign of Pisces. So allow yourself to lean into the magic and the romance. Just don't let it kind of, don't let it take you into the waves, because there can be a sense of like losing yourself, especially with Neptune's kind of connection to getting lost or disappearing. There can also be some heavier topics that can come with the Venus-Neptune conjunction, that it's not unusual to see like a femme fatale situation play out, or issues in regards to a relationship involving any kind of abuse or even like drugs, alcohol, that kind of stuff. So these things can happen, right? But I would do anything for this person, the willingness to sacrifice anything and everything for love, because you're buying into or believing that you're seeing this person in their ideal image, right? So watch for that. But also I think of the divine connection. You know, Venus and Neptune in conjunction represents the connection between the heart and the imagination. The fact that love can be our religion, that peace can be the way that we navigate moving forward in relationships, and also a way for using art as a means for healing, right? Healing and our way of being able to kind of like worship. Remember, Venus is connected to anything that's sweet. So we think of sugar, chocolate, bees, honey, milk, right? All of those things that is all kind of somehow concocted into our Valentine's Day chocolates. But there's ways of being able to work with that sweetness and honor the goddess without like stuffing our face with bonbons. So something I like to do is like putting out fresh flowers. I like to put out bells. I like to get nice beeswax, like honey candles. Sometimes I also like to put out jewelry and things like that for Venus. In the sign of Pisces, like shells would be wonderful. Taking a great like salt bath, or even working with Himalayan salt can be wonderful. Roses, honey, fresh milk, things like that. And soak and do something in honor of Venus. So if you're gonna have a glass of wine, pour one for her as well. And then last but not least, and this one is the one that I think is perhaps the most important, and I think that Venus would agree. I think of the Venus-Neptune connection and sacred water and protective rituals. Big theme right now, okay? I'm a natal Saturn-Neptune conjunction person myself. Actually, I have Venus-Saturn-Neptune conjunct. And this is something that's been kind of like weighing really heavy on my heart the last week since I've heard the news. So many people are not aware because it's severely underreported, but the recent ecological fallout from the derailment of the freight train carrying toxic materials in a rural Ohio town. It's been about 10 days since the disaster. Around 50 train cars derailed on February 3rd in a small town of East Palestine, including about 20 cars carrying hazardous substances. Now, no one was killed, thankfully. However, I guess an axle broke and the train came off the tracks. More than 2,000 residents were evacuated due to health concerns over the chemical leak, and they have been since allowed to return, but apparently people are complaining, claiming that they're having all sorts of weird symptoms and reactions as a result of just what's in the atmosphere, what's in the air in this area. Now, there was a number of different chemicals that were involved in this particular spill. Vinyl chloride, I guess they came in. There was also a phosphogene, a gas deployed as a chemical weapon that was used during the First World War. And there's just huge billowing black clouds in the air. If you guys haven't already seen the photos or the images of this, please check this out. And maybe you guys are asking, well, what does this have to do with anything? Well, Neptune can be about poison, okay? It can be about poison gases, it can be about poison liquids, it can be about poisoning the ocean, poisoning water. In particular, with Venus coming into conjunction with us, I feel like there is like a real importance for people to know that the health and the wellness of our water is incredibly important. And I feel like this getting swept underneath the rug is not only just devastating for the residents and also for animals and people in the surrounding area, but it's also really important to be aware of how this is going to be affecting our waterways. Apparently, a number of people within a 10-mile radius are complaining and posting photos and talking about the fact that they have seen dead animals, chicken, fish, and various other animals that are now dying as a result of post effects from this particular accident. More importantly, it appears that the hazardous materials that were found in samples taken from a number of waterways in the area, Sulphur Run, Leslie Run, Bull Creek, Norfolk, Little Beaver Creek, and Little Beaver Creek and the Ohio River, apparently have all turned up with positive traces of having some of these chemicals in the water. Now, materials also related to the incident have been observed going down into storm drains. Okay, so people are noticing that they're seeing this. Apparently, various agencies are highlighting the areas of contaminated soil and free liquids that have been observed as well. Why is this important? Well, if you look at a map and you see where Ohio is, first of all, it's a very fertile area, okay? Lots of livestock, lots of food, lots of other resources do come from that area, and everything flows south from the Ohio River, all down through the south of the country, and eventually is going to come out just like literally out of Louisiana into the Gulf Coast, into our oceans. So it's really important to realize that, you know, as Saturn is coming into Pisces here soon, we are going to see the potential for more issues in regards to water that's been contaminated, water also that is becoming scarce, and secrets in regards to water and what might be put in the water that can affect our health in general. Now, Venus rules over sweet water, rivers, streams, ponds, and lakes. And with sextiles to Pluto and Capricorn, it's not hard to disagree that potentially this is a setup for a grand scale government cover up. And big business, okay, that's another thing, big business, the business and the insurance and the companies that are involved who are not wanting to cover this. Apparently, according to what I've read as of today on the 13th, the company who is responsible, the train union, I guess that's responsible for this, is willing to donate $25,000 worth of money into going and cleaning this up and correcting some of this. However, they are suggesting that it could be as much as $5 million worth of damage. Okay, so this is really important because things like this, if they get swept under the rug, we could potentially see down the road, not only are we going to be totally ruining what can be really important sources of natural streams and rivers, but also all of the wildlife and everything that belongs to those areas. Because Neptune is hidden, secret, it can also be liquids and toxics. I'm really watching for when Venus hits about 29 degrees and forms an exact sextile to Pluto. This will be a couple days after this conjunction. And if we were to follow, like I said, the various rivers that go throughout the central United States, rivers, streams, canals, right, ponds, all kinds of stuff, we don't know what this could affect or get into. I'm extremely concerned about the potential that this could really make a lot of people sick. And so I'm encouraging everybody, I'll put a link to this into this video. This is something actually that I've had for a while. I have friends from when I lived in Los Angeles who happen to be a part of various indigenous groups who would go and sit in ceremony with their Native American tribes. And one in particular, she is a granddaughter of one of the major granddaughters who sit with the 13 indigenous grandmothers. Super awesome. Love hearing from them, talking to them. I reached out to her and I was like, what can we do to help? And she encouraged me to relay this information to you guys in hopes that if you live near sweetwater rivers, streams, lakes, or ponds, or if you want to do something to help, obviously, please donate. Find a group that you can donate towards. Get this information out. Share some of this information with other people. If you live in these areas, call your local representatives and ask them what they're going to be doing about this. Secondly, and I'll link this, I want you guys to potentially help with a water blessing ceremony. So you can say this out loud. You can pour water in your altar space, light a candle if you want to go to fresh water and you want to do this as well, just to help this process heal. So this is a water blessing ceremony from the International Council of 13 Indigenous Grandmothers. What you want to do this is prepare a bowl of clean water and stand beside a body of water. So you want to pray for the water and apology for polluting and disrespect, and offer prayers of love and gratitude and respect. Hold both of your hands towards the water from your heart, and from your heart, your energy will be projected into the water through your hands. You want to do this while you're closing your eyes. Please intend that the vibrations which now fill the water will spread to the water and all of our Mother Earth. You may also add your own prayer to the water, meditation, chanting, music, songs, dancing, and an intention of the same purpose. Pour a little bit of the water onto your hand with loving thought and sprinkle the water away like you're spreading seeds. And then drink the water with a feeling of gratitude. And then say, we thank those who join us as we pray for the life of our water and our future generations. Obviously, any variation is fine. Really, it's the intention that counts. If you want to do this through ritual, if you want to do this through, like I said, donation, raising awareness and sharing this information, and if you happen to have people who are connected to anyone who can help with preservation, cleaning up, informing people, any of that stuff, it's going to be really, really, really helpful to this cause. If you guys want to see more about how the Venus-Neptune conjunction is going to be playing out for you personally, check out my February horoscopes. I do talk about this aspect for each and every one of the 12 signs. Hopefully you guys liked a little bit of this video on more information about the Venus-Neptune conjunction and really what it means to be celebrating sacrifice and purification and love in a very different way. Leave me your comments below. Give me a thumbs up. Make sure you guys are subscribed. I will be back on Thursday talking to you guys all about the Saturn-Sun conjunction in Aquarius and what that means for all of us, because we're all getting ready to graduate from our Saturn in Aquarius lessons. Until Thursday, I'll see all of you guys very soon. Take care.